at 2:04. I know, we're late. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I'm going to, in just 1 second, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to give us a budget update. But really, the only thing that to take note of is that there is the change order number 14 in the amount of $41,000, which we did subtract from the construction contingency. It was $200,000 last month, and it's now $158,000. And before I let Aaron talk about it, I do want to go over, just so that we're all on the same page, so that everybody understands. So this is just kind of a working budget. This is, again, not how much has necessarily been paid. So this month, Kelly and I kind of tracked the budget to see where we were. And so right now, like as far as actual paid money to C&I, we're right at 55% is how much we've paid them of that $11 million figure. So the rest of them we've kind of tracked along the way to make sure that we're not exceeding anything that you see in blue. And so what we did was we subtracted what has been paid out with what is still left to be paid, and with this 284 number and with what is actually in the bank, we are right on the money. I'm not going to say it's to the penny, but it is pretty darn close. So for me, for $17 million, while we're still paying, I feel like that is, I mean, to me, I was astounded, to be honest with you. So I felt really good about that. Again, this is the total project, and if you remember correctly, and I'm saying this just to make sure that everybody understands, the money is there. It just simply hasn't been appropriated yet. So each month we have these meetings so that we can kind of see where we are, see what the expenses for the upcoming month we think will be, and we appropriate additional money. It's just an additional checks and balances to make sure that we are keeping track of it and that we're not, and if there is an issue, that we catch it quickly and it doesn't get away from us. But so when we make those appropriations every month, it's not because the project needs more money or is over budget. It's just simply we are funding the project more from the already money that's already there. So, okay, Aaron, if you've got anything to add to the budget.
I don't. You pretty much hit the highlight there. Hadn't much changed on those budgets other than what you already mentioned. So we had a change order 14, and then took that same amount out of the previous construction contingency, line number 45, I think. It used to be in red ink, changed it to bold black so we weren't throwing off our accounting. Thank you. Yeah, good suggestion. So we just lower that contingency, that same amount. To explain that change order, majority of that is the cost of painting. The base bid had the ceiling painted one color, but Evergreen is asking, and for good reason, to have 4 colors on the ceiling instead of just one. So there's going to be some more the triglyphs. As you can imagine, the decoration that's on the ceiling, there'll be a color scheme that works with the Evergreen painting. We didn't want to go to that expense of all those different colors unless we were certain that Evergreen was going to be involved here. So there's 4 colors on the ceilings, or a lot more taping off for the subcontractor. And then about half of it is C&I overhead, because we're adding Evergreen as a subcontractor. There is markup on that portion. So that is basically what you're seeing on that change order, because Evergreen's contract is so significant and the painting is significant, that basically accounts for that change order cost. I don't think there was much else modified on it. We changed some of the colors from orange to blue. Like we said before, the blue is kind of fixed known costs. Those aren't fluctuating anymore. So that's all good news. There's it's less of a moving target, as we move through time. Still, a couple of those other allowance items are shown to be pending They're still pending. We're still waiting on some numbers to really nail those down. But yeah, for the most part, we're doing pretty good. We just, aren't aware of a whole lot of other change orders that are out there. There's probably still will be a couple that we know of, but they're fairly minor. But there's nothing that's going to really bite us or take all of our contingency money. So I think we're doing pretty good overall.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and I am going to put Aaron on the spot real quick before we move on to the next item. We were talking, and just for, again, I think for everybody's sake, so that we're all understanding what we're doing here, as far as there's 4, especially in the old part of the old courthouse. The new courthouse, of course, is brand new and everything in it's brand new. So the old courthouse, I'm going to turn it on to you now.
Okay. You're talking about the
yes, the
rehabilitation, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So when it comes to working on older buildings, we try to do everything according to the way the Secretary of the Interior establishes guidelines, and it's not there's no rule about it. They're just guidelines. It's sort of the do's and don'ts when you're dealing with buildings that are on the National Register, things that you do and things that you don't do. And so we want to follow and be consistent with the things that you do it correctly. But in essence, you can do pretty much anything you want, truthfully. So as far as it concerns the court, well, the first thing that you decide, I guess, when you're working on these older buildings is, are you working on a restoration? Are you working on a rehabilitation? Is it preservation or is it reconstruction? And the Secretary of the Interior defines all these terms. They all mean things. And on a courthouse project, it is a rehabilitation, meaning not restoration. So for instance, the Johnny Cash house is a restoration in the sense that we're turning back the clock to the 1930s when he grew up in his home, and that's the way we want it to look. That wasn't what we're doing here. We're not turning back the clock to 1925. It's not that. It's rehabilitation, meaning you're taking this older building and you are making modifications inside to meet with your current codes and standards and needs. You're moving walls, but you're keeping what's old and historic about it, the most prominent parts about it, as much as you can, as much as is reasonable. So the marble lobby, for instance, we didn't really want to goof with the marble lobby. The old light fixtures, we didn't really want to monkey with light fixtures, but restore those. The quarry tile floors, so much as reasonable in those public spaces on the first floor and the second floor, keep those things intact as best you can. Marble panels, marble wainscot. So that's what we've done. Beyond those walls, beyond the public corridors, we've gutted it essentially. We've taken down all those partitions, new metal studs, new wiring, new heat and air, all that stuff. So that's basically the overall strategy that we took on that building. It's a rehabilitation is really the term.
If you don't mind, do you mind to explain? Okay, so in the old courthouse, there is exposed conduit, and there is a reason why it's still exposed.
Yeah. So it always had exposed piping to a degree. I'll admit there's much more exposed there than I wanted there to be, but we always knew there would be some. We hid as much of it as we could with these drywall fur downs that you can see in some places. We wanted to conceal as much of it as possible. But given that the courthouse historically had exposed piping and that infrastructure, we thought it was okay to expose some of that again and not try to hide all of it. We could have done a couple of things differently. We felt what we did was probably the most reasonable. You could drop ceilings like this, which in my opinion don't look great in an old courthouse where you have these drop ceilings. You could fur out the exterior walls and hide the piping and say new stud walls and a new layer of sheetrock. Certainly adds more expense, but more troublesome for us, which we've learned from experience, is you create a cavity inside an exterior wall. These exterior walls are solid masonry. They'll leak a little bit of air. If you create a situation where you've got a layer of sheetrock that you can't see the back side of it, but you've got a potential for condensation for air that leaks in from that outside wall, and say it's hot, humid air on the outside that's coming in and it's hitting air-conditioned air inside, you set up potential for mold. Inside this cavity of spaces, you'll never know until somebody just complains of sickness. So we just didn't want to go there. So we felt it would just not create that situation to let any air that's escaping the inside evaporate naturally from that environment that's inside. So it's aesthetically, yeah, it's not as wonderful as we would have hoped it would have been, but like I said, we can look back on those old photographs. There's certainly exposed piping. It was a part of the original courthouse. It was always in the offices. It wasn't in the public areas as much. So that's kind of the tack that we took.
I know, and these are just not necessarily questions that you guys have asked, but just other people have asked questions.
Why.
So I thought, Aaron, so that we're all understanding why we've done what we've done, I thought I would let him go over it. Any other questions for Aaron? Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so yesterday when I was talking with Kelly, it looks like after the expenses from this past month are paid and everything, we'll have around $250,000 left appropriated. A little bit more than that, but not much. So if we keep with what we've been doing, we would appropriate an additional $750,000 to the project this month.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
$750,000.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will move that to the full court to do an additional appropriation of $750. And again, that's coming, finance, sorry. And again, that's coming out of the construction fund, not the general fund. So just Osceola update, is everything moving?
Most of the scaffold is down. They're keeping up that one tower, I think, for access, but most of the copper work is done. The slate roof is done. We're waiting on windows. Is pretty much the last thing that we have left. I try to get an ETA on that. They're I think having trouble with supply of the wood, for the windows, but I think it'll at least be a few more weeks before you see windows in the courtroom. Windows. Also, pigeon control. You asked me to kind of research that, and I have made some progress there. I found another company and another solution for trying to deal with it. But I don't have a budget figure yet, and it just involves some electrical wiring essentially that might be better than the next light that we recommended, and this product is used on all of the monuments in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So it's been around, it's being used, apparently with success. But in Osceola, it's just a little different situation because it's so skinny and high up in the air, and it's going to be challenging in reality to try to hook it up. So I've sent them photographs and kind of asking for them to tell us some idea what it's going to cost. Another alternative, which would probably be a lot less expensive, is just some sound.
Yeah.
And now I've found a device that would probably work pretty well, and it's only a couple $100, and that's nothing, on the scheme of what we might be looking at. But there's not a great place to set it, so there's not, you kind of want to set it out of the way where no one's going to walk off with it, and it's non-obtrusive, but it works. So I just haven't found that great spot yet to put it. So I'm still trying to find something that will work for you there. Don't have an answer for you just yet.
All right, and so we do have some money that has not been designated in the fund, just that from the previous appropriations that we did to give Aaron some leeway with the pigeon control. So once he does find something, I think he can come back with us, but that will not require an appropriation. So, all right. The next.
Throw out a question.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
I know that Renaissance took the cupola to Philadelphia.
Yes.
Has it been returned yet?
Yeah. So I talked to Jake about that yesterday or 2 days ago, and I told him everything that you have in your possession that came from Osceola needs to come back to Osceola. They did have the cupola, and one of the scroll pieces that they brought up there to use as a template for making the new one. And I told him it needs to come back, and he said, yeah, he did it back here. So they still have some copper, but most of it, I understand, is here in the box.
Stored right there on the parking lot.
I'm not really sure where I assume so, but I'm not really sure where.
The judge told me that it
I thought
was
it was
at the
the road-
road department.
Yeah, that's-
He's got it
yeah.
under lock and key at the road department.
That's right,
What he
yeah.
told me in a
Yeah.
container.
You've been out there? Okay.
With Ed.
Yeah,
I don't think Ed's happy yet.
No, he's not.
No, I spoke
He's
with
not the
Ed.
only one down there.
No,
There's a lot
I
of
spoke
people
with
in
Ed
South End
yesterday.
that,
You did?
and
Yes.
he's not happy, is he?
Well, we just briefly touched on that. We've mostly touched on something on a state park.
Oh, you got that too?
Yeah.
It's where is the old copper is what I keep getting
Yeah.
asked, and I'm out of it, I'm not in it, and I don't know what to say, but they aren't gonna let this go.
Well,
That's why I'm late today, because I was talking to Ed.
Okay, well, so let's go to the south end and straight to the
Just
horse.
putting it on the record, that's why I was late, because as I was walking out, he was coming in, so I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I'm late. But
Right, you got here,
still
that's
had
the
some same questions.
I mean,
I'd like to know when that copper is back. because
Yeah.
Personally, I think we need to look at, the price of copper is through the roof.
Yeah.
We need to look at selling that and putting it back into Osceola for further use to help
Yeah,
repair
we-
that building.
Yeah. Yeah, we made a, for whatever it's worth, we made a point of it in the beginning, when this thing was bid, put it in the bid documents, we're keeping that copper, so the owner is maintaining the rights to this copper, so they do that from the get-go. Now, I've not put my eyes on where it's stored, but yes, I've been told it's at the road and bridge. I'm aware that they took some copper, like the cupola and the scroll piece, because they needed a template so they can
Let's
match
understand.
it. But I called Jack and said, look, if there's a single piece of copper that it came off that roof, it needs to be back here right away. So he got the picture. So he'll bring back those pieces they use for a template. But the majority of it should be in that box. And if it helps, I don't know if it will, but you know, I came up here every couple of weeks and climbed that scaffold and took photographs to the progress. And I've got proof that shows the new orange shiny copper at the point it went on that building. It was new when it went on that building.
Okay, here's a question, and I don't know if you can answer it because this was asked by another court member who's not here today. Do we have any idea of exactly how much new copper was put on that number?
I could ask, they'll know. I mean, they had to order.
Would you please?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That way, that will answer one question,
Okay.
and then, if possible, I'd like to find out how much we took off,
Yeah.
and
like, you mean like percentage wise, how much was new, or
No.
like weight,
They
gate,
want-
or?
what they asked me was how much new copper was put on that building.
Different pieces supposed to be made.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I mean.
More copper went on than came off for a couple reasons. First of all, we used heavier gauge, 20-ounce copper in lieu of
Right.
16-ounce copper in
And
some places.
I understand that, but this
And-
question is because some people are questioning,
Yeah,
period,
right.
what
So,
we've done.
Yeah.
okay, and I did not look closely, but in the pay apps that we pay, I mean, with that information would, no?
Yeah, on the pay app, they'll just have a number, a figure for copper, and it's, however many hundreds of thousands, but it doesn't stipulate quantity.
Okay.
So Renaissance would have to tell me literally how much copper did you order for this project. They should be able to tell us
Okay.
exactly
Okay.
how much copper.
Please, I'm tired of hearing questions about it.
Yeah.
Let's find out how much was put up there.
Right, yeah, it's just
See
math.
if we
Yeah.
can find out how much came off,
Right.
and then I think we need to look at moving while the price of copper is high. Because I know someone told me they sold it for $4.61 a pound last week.
Yeah,
Is there anything else that we could use that copper for that would be useful to the Osceola courthouse?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not it may be possible to melt it down and have it
trouble with this.
Probably,
I just
yeah.
didn't know if you had some idea in mind about repurposing.
Well, I know somebody said something
Yeah,
about making bracelets out of them, but you're
Yeah,
gonna have to
it's-
have them melted.
Yeah,
Well,
all
that's-
that,
I
and
mean-
we're gonna be at a good sized expense to do that.
yeah.
I think the county, if we
Generate some
can, we
revenue
need to
with it,
recover
use
it.
it to go back
Put it
in,
back in Osceola Courthouse.
replaster or paint.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Exactly.
need to.
Because we need to do some more work down there. We've got some cleanup.
Yeah, that's the
You love it
problem.
when I come to your meetings.
I do, I'm so glad you're here today.
Yeah, that's probably the most valuable thing, is cash it in, whatever you get, from
Well,
the copper, put it back in.
In the building.
Yeah.
Would
I
that
think we
need to be
should.
in a formal, I mean,
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we find out,
Get it
when
all
we
back
get all
and
this copper back,
Yeah.
then we take it and we find out how much it is valued. Because there are places that will give you a price and will guarantee it, when you haul it to them.
Yeah.
I can second it.
okay, is there any discussion about making a motion to,
Get rid of it.
to sell the copper?
South End?
Sell the whole copper. Get rid of it.
All right, will that help to answer some questions that you're getting?
I think right
Okay.
now, mostly everybody's just question is how much is put on? Was any of the old copper put back on? I think that's the main questions that
It-
Everyone's
it-
still
I think that
It's
what
all
we're
there.
gonna do with this, if we can find out how much was put on, and we can find out how much we had, I think we can say we put more back on.
Yeah.
right.
So I think that's important to get those answers.
Right, I think it's important to get those answers before we move on deciding, to sell it or do all that. I think
While the
questions
price
need to
of
be
it is
answered
very good,
for the South End.
I think that it would help if the South End realized that we would take that money, put it right back in to their courthouse,
Absolutely.
Right.
and, help them
Is that
to
part of your-
rehab that courthouse.
Is that part of your motion?
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember? Okay. All right, so we have a motion to, let's go ahead and sell the copper that came off the Osceola Dome once we have how much went back on new, and then also how much we are actually going to get rid of. And then that money will go back into the Osceola Courthouse, project. So, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, so I don't know where that moves to, but we'll move it
I
along
think
somewhere.
that should go directly to the corn court, because that would come from energy and property, unless it needs to go to finance because there's money involved in it when we sell it, but I would think.
This is a principal issue.
So it'd be more like a
Yeah, resolution,
resolution
Yeah.
type thing, just a
just an intent, a statement of intent from this committee.
Okay. Okay, the next, I have not really had much more discussion, with the judge about the Blytheville Police Department. Has anybody had any additional thoughts, or
Well, the city won't sell it.
they want to sell it?
They want to sell it. They don't want to give it away. And
$1?
no, they ain't talking about that. They want enough money that they say we help with the lights out on the interstate. That's not the point.
Well, that answered that question right
And-
there.
As I told you before, I worked in that building, and here's the problem that I'm seeing. I know where it was sealed off at, and it is well into the main part of that building. So that means you're gonna have black mold to clean up, even if you tear off. There's a part over there, over the fire department, that has a flat roof. You go back, and then there is a second story, and none of this is under that metal roof. That part has deteriorated to the point there's black mold growing in it. The ceiling has collapsed in it. So that part's gonna have to be torn off. Problem is, the air conditioning for that part of that building is connected into the main building for at least 30 to 40 feet of the length of that building and the entire width. You have to know that the building is approximately 75 feet wide and approximately 120 feet long, so you're going to lose 30 feet there that you're either going to have to go in and clean up or do something with, and I think the expense is not something we want to take on.
Only thing I'm interested in is the lot.
I would be interested in a lot if
I
they
agree.
clean it up, level it.
Like this tabletop where we can build what we want on it.
Exactly.
And I'd be willing for us to try to help with the cleanup and knockdown, but as far as to buy a non-usable building, I don't think county ought to be interested in that.
That's my opinion, so y'all can take that.
I will involve Aaron just a little bit more in the meeting today. I did talk with him earlier at the courthouse about the potential of the building, and I just kind of impromptu asked him his thoughts. So I am putting him on the spot here, just so just keep that in mind. This is not necessarily like formal. He's just kind of as an architect giving us some just like thoughts and ideas and opinions from him, just so we can all be a little bit more informed about an old building.
I think you all know my bias here. Early on,
Hey,
my
we
bias.
love you for it.
Yeah, I love old buildings. I prefer old buildings. They were able to pull things off that we're generally not capable of doing today. Generally, there's just craftsmanship and workmanship in the detailing of some of these buildings that I admire as an architect. If you were to try to rebuild this courthouse or rebuild City Hall, that we're looking at, you couldn't do it. You couldn't afford that level of detail and quality that went into it. So and on top of that, there's other reasons to really think through when you take buildings down that define that community for generations. It could put you lose your identity. You lose who you are and what you built and these places that mean things to people. And so there's things to be said that are outside of the realm of just sheer economy and dollars and cents, and you can't put a price tag on those things. So I'm always going to be a proponent for keeping your historic buildings and doing your very best to try to work to keep them as much as you can before you consider demolition, because once they're gone, you can't get them back, kind of thing. And if what would go back is primarily about storage, there's just no reason to put in all the windows and the fenestration, the arches and all that stuff, the columns and the capitals and all that trim. That's not how you do a storage building, so what you're going to put back is just something that's just not quite as attractive and interesting as what you have there right now. But I don't for a second pretend that this is an easy problem, that you ought to just keep it no matter what, because this stuff's expensive. I understand that. And regardless of what you do with it, even if you take it down, you're still going to have to deal with the asbestos, the abatement. That has to happen no matter what. Mold is a different issue. It's not regulated, by ADEQ like asbestos is. It's a different subject. So it's more about just fresh air, just opening up the windows and letting it dry out. But I don't. My thought about it too is, I know when we built this building, it wasn't quite as large as we had recommended. We recommended a much bigger building. A lot of that was we were, I think, considering another courtroom. And so that extra space that the courtroom takes, plus the jury for that courtroom, the judge for that courtroom, the extra space for that courtroom. So just having another courtroom in and of itself eats up a lot of square footage. So I don't know if the net difference between 36,000 feet that you're going to have now and the 56 or something that we recommend.
56.
Yeah. So I don't know if the net 20,000 is pure storage that you necessarily need, but yeah, we do know you're going to be limited, in space and as far as documents go. Compared to where you're at right now, where you got, a lot of room, for storing documents. But I don't know if you need, a building that huge, for all that storage space. So I would hope that if you take that building or somebody takes on, there's mixed use, there's other purposes for it. There's either businesses or something else that goes inside there. But so you asked, I'll tell you, my opinion is I would love to see you keep your older buildings before you take them down. It's just my 2 cents.
Which I do understand his preservationist view, and which I really do love him for. That's why we worked with him
We're
so
just,
well.
yeah, that's right,
But
just
It's
giving
not
that
our
side.
building.
it's not
But it's
our
not-
building.
And if we don't purchase it, we don't have a stake in it.
Right.
I mean, if the city can find someone else to take it and keep it and use it, that's fine.
Exactly.
If they decide to tear it down and they need help, then we can look at that. But as of the moment, I'm just saying, I don't think it's a good investment for us.
Well, if it were so historically and aesthetically important to the city, they wouldn't have abandoned it. So,
Well, so, okay, so, what I think I'm hearing is that this committee has no interest in buying that building from the city of Blytheville. Would that be correct? There could be some potential, but we are not interested in buying the building.
No. And I'll put that in motion of a resolution that because of the dilapidated state of the building and the cost to bring it back to what it should be for the appearances, I do not think it is a wise decision for us to buy it, and I would recommend that we not buy it.
Okay, any further discussion?
Let me just add one more thing, if you don't mind, because I think it might help in general. Because there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding, I think, about buildings that are listed on the National Register. And I don't know if that building is on the National Register. I know the Blytheville Courthouse is, and the Osceola Courthouse is. But a lot of people think that if something's listed on the National Register, that you can't do anything, about that building or, all that stuff. And that's not really the case. The National Register is purely honorary. If you own a building that's on the National Register, you can do whatever you want with it, literally. You can take it down, there's not a thing wrong. The worst thing that can happen is that they can delist it. They can take it off the National Register if you change out the windows or you paint it pink or something. They can take it off the register. And it doesn't look good in the newspapers. But that's the worst thing that can happen. The only time that it ever matters is if you get federal money. So if you get federal money on it, or if you get a loan, or you get a grant, from the preservation program, they own an easement on it kind of thing, then yes, there are legal hoops that you gotta run through. But that's just so that you guys know, anything that's listed on registers, because it's a historic building, generally doesn't mean anything.
We know that building is in the historic district for downtown Blytheville, because I know what the outlines for it are, and I know that it was built in I believe it was 28 is what the plaque says, or 23. So it is.
So buildings can be individually listed, or they are considered contributing to a district.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was considered contributing to a district. So, and all that means is you can take it down, you still have the district, you still have all these other buildings, and that district is only impacted if a certain quantity, or certain your mass of historic buildings all of a sudden are lost. Well, then you can lose that district listing, but it's purely honorary. It means it's all it is. Yeah, and it does have an impact for tax reasons. So the biggest incentive for buildings that are listed on the register or that are considered contributing are tax credits. They can be very helpful to private investors that want access to tax credits. Not tax deduction, an actual tax credit up to 45% of what you spend on qualifying expenses can go to credits, and you can sell them. So if you can consider, it'd be more lucrative if you consider a private developer to take over that building, it'd be much more lucrative to them, because they've got those credits that they can then sell for 90 cents on the dollar, from what I've heard. So it can be a big deal to private investors.
Okay, we have a motion from Justice Ash that we are not, that at this point, we are not interested in purchasing the Blytheville Police Department. And I believe Justice Hinton, did you second that? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? And I know that this was okay, so it passes. This was not part of the motion, but I feel like we should mention, that we are very interested in what happens to that building.
Absolutely.
And, you know, would certainly entertain something, something different at a later date. The last thing, and I'm saying this just as a personally for the record, last thing I want to see is that building just sit there. I don't,
Absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, just wanted to mention that, put that out there. So, okay, moving along. The meeting schedule. Did you guys set? I left a little early. Did you guys set?
It'll be another 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Okay.
Was that the 26th?
Let's look at that.
25th.
Oh, we do. Yeah. So okay. Let's see here. So we're on the that would be the 25th, and so that would put our meeting, since we're just doing monthly, would put it on the 8th, June the 8th, and that's Tuesday, June the 8th. If we follow the every 2 weeks. All right. Is there any other discussion or business that needs to come before? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right. So moved.